Forgive me if I'm a little flushed. I just spent the last few hours cutting down lots of trees of where our future home's going to be, and also felling a big tree that I'll use for more fencing. But I wanted to make a video today because yesterday somebody reached out to Carlia and I about homeschooling and how we do it and if we like it, because they're kind of been mulling whether or not to do it. And it's funny because the last video I made, I almost touched on the subject, and then I felt like, well, I should just go ahead and talk about how we do homeschool and why we do homeschool. And I'll talk about why we do homeschool at the end, but how we do homeschool I think is kind of unique because not everybody really sees what homeschool can be like. The first thing that really helped me, now we've been doing it for 5 years, and I've been doing it personally since we moved up here, so this is my 3rd year, and I love it so much. But the first thing that really released me and helped me after the first 6 months of struggling with it was that I got some advice on don't try to replicate public school. And that really helped me because, you know, the public school system has all of its regimented deadlines and schedules and ideology and dialogue and just how they do everything is just so structured. And homeschool doesn't have to be like that. At the end of the day, what we're trying to do as teachers is teach how to learn. Like, that's such a massive piece. If someone can learn how to learn, they'll be successful in life. On top of that, probably the most important things that a person could learn is reading and writing and arithmetic. That's why we used to say that little phrase all the time, but it's true. If you can understand the basics of math, and so that you know how to logically get through dilemmas or, you know, mathematically be able to build something or work on something, and if you can read as well as you can write and express yourself in a good way, then you're going to be successful in life no matter what. Because if you can get down reading and writing and math, you can learn anything in your life. So those are really the foundation of what I tried to base everything off of, as well as understanding I am here to teach my kids how to learn. Instead of trying to get some quota met or some standard testing done, it's really about if they are learning, and if they're learning how to learn, then we're successful. So what we do is, in the mornings, we start with 2 subjects a day. And the reason I do that is because instead of having all the subjects in one day and just stopping and starting and stopping and starting through subjects every 30 minutes, you're really just like getting nowhere, because every single time you do that, you have to get your kid to get kind of, you know, in it again. So what we do is we'll do history and math, and I'll do 2 days worth of history and math in that day. And then the next day, we'll do 2 days of language arts and 2 days worth of science. So my kids on top of that are doing tons of things as well. You know, they're doing husbandry, horticulture, cooking, target practice, on top of their basic foundation. So that foundational stuff is important, and we do that, and we get done with that usually around 11 a.m. Each day. But then they have these other things on top of that they do throughout the day, or horseback riding and training, and again, that comes into husbandry, but also, you know, how to run a farm and take care of animals and take care of learning about foods, learning about diet, you know, learning about how to take care of your land. All of those things are important aspects that really go beyond just what you're doing in the moment, but broaden your mind to understanding the world around you. Everywhere and anything can be school. You know, whenever I'm driving in the car with my kids and we have to go a long distance, more than 20 minutes, I just start doing spelling bee type stuff. I ask each of them how to spell a word that's based on their, you know, where they're at in their curriculum. And that's fun. There's no time involved in that. There's no testing. There's no like, oh, you have to do this or else. You know, they just enjoy getting praised by their siblings or by me whenever they get it right. And if they don't get it right, that's okay, because they're just learning anyway. So they're just learning how to spell words better as we drive around throughout town. Also, every single night, my kids read at least 30 minutes before bed. And so the point of that is that they are, for one, calming themselves down to sleep better, and 2, they're just in reading all the time. Reading is so important for stretching our minds and being able to understand things better. And then at the end of, whenever they finish a book, they have to write me a report. But I'm not looking for a 5-paragraph essay. Like, those things are junk. And sorry to anybody who teaches those, but they're never used in real life, and there's no creative writing in that. Instead, what I'm looking for is I'm asking them to tell me who wrote it, what they got out of it, Who were their favorite characters? What did they like about it? What did they not like about it? What would they change if they were writing that story? Would they recommend that story to anybody else their age? If they can write that, then I know that they comprehended what they read. And what I have them do is write their paper, and then they come to me and they ask me how to spell words before they turn it in. And again, that's another time for me to be able to ask them, well, how do you think you spell that word? You know, it's like interesting. Well, how do I spell that? How do you think you spell interesting? And then they start writing that out. And if they miss something, that's okay, because they're just learning every single time to get better at it. And then they turn the paper in, and if I can understand that they comprehended the book well, and because I just had them go through it all of spell checking it for me, that makes it a lot easier for me to be able to read it. And then if it's a good paper, then they go to the store and they get to choose whatever favorite candy they like. The point is that school can be creative. School can be broken out of the four walls. I mean, where we're at, we don't even have four walls. We're doing it outside, unless it's raining or freezing. But the point is that it doesn't have to be so systemized and so stuck. You know, that system was made because there were so many different kids all in the same place at once, and so you needed a system. But whenever you're working with just your children, you get to see how they learn, and you get to love them in a new way, which is really exciting. And I just thoroughly enjoy that, being able to teach my kids. And that really leans into why we do homeschooling instead of public school. And the reason for that is because now I get to teach my kids and see what they're actually learning, and I get to learn alongside them and love them through that process. I get to see what's challenging for them, and I get to see them grow. You know, sometimes it's not fear-based. Sometimes Christians get this bad rap of, like, I've heard other Christians say, well, we don't homeschool because that's just fear-based. You know, people say, I don't want to be inside the public school system because it's terrible and they're going to indoctrinate my kids and stuff. Well, we're not afraid of that because we're going to the mission field to do it. And like, okay, that's fine if you think that way. I don't think that's accurate, because what I do is I'm not taking my kids out of public school because I'm afraid. I'm actually taking them into homeschool because I think that's harder. Like, I think it's the lazy man's job to give your kid just to the public school system and say, here, raise my kid for me. Teach them everything they need to know, indoctrinate them with whatever you want, and I don't really have to be hands-on because you've got it, and you just let go. It's a lot harder to homeschool and go through all those every single subject with your kids, having to know how to do it all as well, and then give it to them and make sure that they understand. That's harder. But at the same time, it's much more rewarding because I get to see them grow. I get to be their dad, who God has given me to foster and love and care for and educate and edify. I get to be hands-on with on a regular basis. And that's amazing. That is such a joy and such a pleasure, such a responsibility and such an honor to be able to do that for my kids. And the idea of fear being involved, well, I do think that the public school system, don't get me wrong, I think there are amazing teachers. I know many great teachers, way more great teachers than I do bad teachers, people who are just, waiting for this to be over with and getting a paycheck and don't really care, and they've checked out, 2 decades ago. But teachers instead who are, in love with it and passionate, unfortunately, they're stuck inside of a system based on a state quota and making sure that that test gets passed by as many kids as possible. And so it doesn't matter about the individual, it matters about the school as a whole, and beyond that as a state, so that all the funding can come in. It's so much of it is money-based instead of the individual kid-based. And that's a problem to me, because then any kid is just a dollar symbol inside of the school system instead of actually being cared for and taught and fostered of what do you actually need. And those are the kids that can get brushed over, especially if they're not vocal enough. Anyway, here's where some problems come in with the public school system and why it needs to change and get better. Until that happens, I'm happy homeschooling so that I can actually have one-on-one time with my children to see what they're learning, what they're growing in. I know what curriculum they're learning. Whenever it says something that's incorrect, let's say like theologically or spiritually, or how the world is actually founded, how money works, how government works, I can lean in and go, well, actually, let's look at this because that's not entirely true what it just said, and can give them a better perspective of it, a godly perspective of some things. Just super encouraging and awesome, and I love that. And, it was like a year and a half ago that we were talking about the gold rush in 1849. And then what came out of that was we talked about California, we talked about socialism and capitalism and communism and money and investing, and all of these different things came out for an hour and a half talking, just starting off the gold rush. And that was pretty neat. And so that's the kind of stuff that can blossom out of just not having the boundaries of you have to do it this certain way, and being able to see what your kids are learning on a regular basis. So we do it for those reasons, because it's free. It's very free. I don't mean free as in expenses, because it is actually more expensive. I'm paying the government and taxes to help other kids get educated, okay? And I'm not having them educate mine. Instead, I'm taking my money and I'm putting it toward books to be able to teach my kids. But I'm okay with that because they're worth it. And they're worth my time. We chose a simpler life and said no to more money so that we could invest in our children and in our land and in our future. And some days it's like, man, I wish I was just outside working, cutting down trees and milling and working with the horses instead of school, but I need to do school. Other times, it becomes, the project gets too big. I got a water line that burst. Guys, there's no school today. And then we make it up later. That's an amazing thing, is you can just, no school today because a crisis happened and I need to go work on this, and we'll make it up later. That's really, really free and encouraging and awesome to just be like, yep, well, we don't have school because whatever happened. Oh, you know what? Hunting season just opened. There's no school today because I'm going to go hunt because we need deer in the freezer. There's really great perks to being homeschooling as well. Whenever my wife has off work, there's no school that day. That's the weekend. She works Saturday and Sunday, and so when she has her day off, that's the weekend. We do school on Saturday and Sunday because we can, and then whenever my wife is off, we get to all be together as a family. There's a lot of families out there. Whenever I was a pastor, I worked every Saturday and Sunday, so I hardly ever saw my kids when they were at public school. That was frustrating, but because my wife works on the weekend and we homeschool, I could be with my kids and my wife all the time. And that's a great thing. Anyway, those are a lot of the benefits to homeschool. That's a lot of how we do it. And there's more to it as well. Again, reading and writing and math really matter. Sitting at the table matters. Don't get me wrong. We do have to just get down to business and do curriculum. But at the end of the day, there's many states. This is crazy. There's many states that on average don't even make it through 30% of their curriculum. That's wild. So if you make it through 75% of your curriculum and have all of these extra things involved, like I said, field trips to aquariums or zoos or husbandry and horticulture, then you're doing great. I encourage you to try homeschooling if you've never thought about it. If you are thinking about it, then do it, because it is hard at first. But when you get that rhythm down and you really start seeing how your kids learn, it becomes easy and it becomes a lot of fun. And I get to learn everything again, too, specifically history, which I love, and seeing, just how amazing our country is and how it was founded. And unfortunately, a lot of schools and universities right now are teaching opposite of that and teaching that our country is not great. And that's frustrating because it really is an awesome country. It gives me the ability to be able to worship freely and teach my kids freely and have all of this. Love you guys. Be blessed.